I'm joined by Dr. Bruce Perry, an Associate Professor of Science Education at Miami University. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you.
We are going to have a discussion about how two different contexts, in my case, the Florida context, and in Bruce's case, the Ohio context, have affected the infusion processes that we both undergone at our institutions. So to begin, I'd like to talk about the curriculum level. And in Florida, we had a situation that we probably don't recommend for other states if they're able to avoid it, and that was a state mandate and a response to a state mandate. It was absolutely necessary that we go about improving our teacher ed curricula vis-a-vis English language learners. But because it was a mandate and we had a very tight timeline, we didn't have the luxury of the type of discussion and planning that other institutions might have. And so what I'd like to do is to walk through the process that was described in the previous segment, which is moving from the curriculum level to the course level and back, and begin by describing a little bit of those criteria as they apply to Florida, and then I'd like to hear a little bit about Ohio. And regarding Florida and the decision making that had to take place, the state told us that any program that led to certification in a language arts area, where the eventual teacher would be responsible for teaching language arts to an English language learner, so early childhood, elementary, secondary English, and exceptional education are the four areas where the mandate took place. Those specific programs had to find a route or a pathway to ensuring that every graduate had the ESOL endorsement. And in our state, we actually had a choice of adding the existing 5 graduate courses, which were 3 credits each, to all of these programs. There were 5,000 level courses, so they could have been added to undergraduate or graduate course programs. But as you can imagine, that would have been a huge expense for students. And at the same time in our state, we also had a cap on the number of hours that we could require for a degree. So we had a real pinch with competing state mandates with a cap on the hours and a requirement to add all this content. And so they gave us this additional option of the infusion. And pretty much most institutions in Florida, a few have selected to add the 5 courses, but most institutions in Florida have chosen the infusion approach, where they've reduced the 5 courses to 3 or 2 and infused the additional content. So for us, we had no choice in the programs. In addition, all other degree programs that lead to initial certification or licensure in Florida are also required to offer 1 course in teaching ELLs. So that's how the state attempted to ensure that every teacher had that background. The competencies for us, the most pressing competencies were, of course, the state endorsement, ESOL endorsement competencies. And we also looked at the national standards, but what we were held accountable for were the state endorsement requirements. And in terms of the level of credentials that that individuals could obtain, there was no selection process whatsoever. If they were in those programs by a certain deadline, they were required to graduate with a degree and meet all of those requirements. So knowing that you had a very different situation in Ohio, can you give us a little background on your context?
Well, we started with a needs assessment, recognizing that in Ohio, as many other states, the number of ELLs that are in the public school classrooms is ever increasing. We in Ohio recognized that while we've, over the last 10 years between 1995 and 2005, had a 6% drop in the number of students in classrooms, we had a 125% increase in the number of ELLs. That right there said we need to address those needs. We need to make sure that candidates leaving institutions of higher education and going into public school teaching or teaching anywhere have skills and competencies to meet those ELL's needs and assure their academic success. Well, with that idea in mind, we sought and received funding from the Office for English Language Acquisition, a grant to develop a curriculum that would allow undergraduate candidates to acquire those skills and competencies that were going to allow them to meet those needs. Now, I will readily admit we have adopted parts of and adapted other parts of what has been the case here in Florida. We've taken the infusion model, we've taken and looked at that very carefully as a way to meet some of those needs, and we've also looked at how can we add to the curriculum without burdening the student greatly so that their time as an undergraduate isn't extended beyond reason. That infusion model gives us the chance to meet some of those curricular needs, but our decision-making process did indeed come back to what is it that we need to do for faculty, what is it that we need to do for candidates, and what is it that we need to do to make sure that this model that we're developing at our institution can be taken to other institutions in Ohio as well. All a part of the grant that we received from OELA. When it came for us to decide how we were going to assess the curriculum and develop which competencies and standards models we were going to use, we had ENSELA, we have the TESOL standards, we are an NCADE institution, so we had all of these to fall back on. And we also had developing a set of TESOL standards in Ohio, which is where we finally ended up focusing our initial thoughts about standards and what do we need to meet. The program decision as to which programs, is it going to be language arts, is it going to be competencies in content areas, we decided across the board. If you are going to be a candidate in a licensure program at Miami University that's going to lead to licensure and instruction in a mainstream or regular classroom, you are going to be eligible for a certificate as a result of the program. All candidates in all programs will receive some infused ELL instruction. It'll be across all programs, but the credentialing will be for those that elect in those licensure programs that lead to a mainstream or regular classroom instruction.
So now we move back to the course level. I know that we've had some experience in Florida that has benefited Ohio in knowing what to do, also knowing what not to do. And first of all, in Florida, in terms of the faculty development, we had a rather wholesale approach to that, and we were working from the general areas that the state had identified similar to the ENSELA standards. From that, we put everybody through pretty much the same training. So we had faculty who were in math education, taking the same type of training as faculty who were in social foundations. And very quickly we saw that that was not an effective way to go about it. And we're able to seek and obtain some external funding to develop more individualized training that could build on the expertise of the content area faculty and not force them to learn in depth about an area of TESOL that would not really have any bearing on their course. So from that experience, we put together some web-based modules that are actually now on the TAPESTRY site, where this module is displayed, and we're able to individualize with those, as well as by establishing a mentoring procedure. And again, being in a way sort of the beta version of the infusion process, we assigned mentors to specific content areas and made them available to faculty to assist them in looking at their syllabi. However, it could have benefited from a more structured approach, and toward the end of our process, we realized that we needed to have a formal process for the mentoring, and I know that you all have made some advances in both of those areas that I'd love to hear about.
Well, you're absolutely right in that we have the advantage of hindsight looking at what has been developed in Florida in terms of the infusion model that you've developed here in the protocols for the mentoring of the faculty in that infusion. And we've taken and adapted that. Very clearly, we recognize that there has to be some across the division, across the entire breadth of the programs that lead to licensure, some infusion of activities. A professional development model has been employed in Miami that allows us to provide for faculty who are interested at some level, some knowledge to be gained about what the ELL brings to the classroom or brings to the school, because we're not always talking just about classroom teachers and ELL needs. But we recognized when we looked at licensure programs that a focused structure that would target the needs of individual faculty in different areas of the licensure programs would probably help us to move the infusion process forward in a streamlined or focused manner. We've identified core courses that are common to all of the licensure programs, and we're working with those faculty to develop 1+ or 2+, going back to the infusion framework, activities that would be appropriate for that course, as well as for the training of the members of the faculty who are teaching in those courses. At the methods level of instruction, we're looking at 2+ activities that would allow for the adaptation, the curriculum integration, and adaptation of instruction for ELL needs. And then the next level, the last level, would be the reading language arts. And again, the different character of infusion in that area builds upon what you've been able to demonstrate at the different levels for credentialing in the Florida plan. Now, we're looking at a slightly different approach in that we're taking experts in ESOL or TESOL and using those experts to help to bring our faculty up to speed with their knowledge so that they can then develop appropriate activities, again with the guidance of this ESOL or TESOL expert, to bring those activities, whether they're a reading and a reflection or an adaptation of curriculum or an adaptation of an approach to language that's used in the classroom for academic instruction, whatever it might be, so that they're both knowledgeable about what needs to be done and knowledgeable of what the student, the candidate in this case, is going to take away from their course. Hopefully this builds upon some of what has been done in Florida and allows it to become a part of the infusion process at Miami University.
And I know that we learned that it's so important that the expertise of both the ESOL specialist and the content area specialist be recognized, brought to the table, that and we've even seen that it's a reciprocal benefit. That and I've served as a mentor, and I have learned all about teaching science and math, and I have a better understanding of those subjects, and I know, I hope that those that I've worked with in those content areas have a better understanding.
This synergy that comes out of those conversations helps all parties to come to better understand what it is that their course can offer to candidates, as well as what they can offer as an individual in the development of the course materials. Assessment as an example. We know that accountability, student accountability is a thread that runs through all of that which we do in teacher preparation these days. High stakes tests, value added formative assessments that are coming along the way. These are critical to meeting the needs that are there in terms of teacher preparation. But if we don't also address the needs that ELLs bring to assessment concerns, we are never going to be able to create in our candidates an understanding of assessment that's going to reach out to all of the students they're going to see. When we're thinking about the course level and the mentoring of the faculty and the preparation of materials that are going to be a part of the course that are going to address various issues for ELLs in instruction and schooling, we also had to think about where do these pieces fit into the curriculum. Our approach, as I've already alluded to, is to look at core courses, methods courses, and reading and literacy courses. But we recognized early on that the mentoring process might be with an ESOL expert and a lead instructor or a course shepherd or a course coordinator, one individual who then has responsibility for a common syllabus across multiple sections offered across multiple licensure programs. That created a different approach to the mentoring, because you couldn't just train one and hope that that training was transferred to others without thinking about that and planning for it as a part of the process of bringing expertise to the course level as well as to the curriculum level. So without that connection, we saw ourselves falling short of goal of being able to infuse thoroughly and completely across the curriculum offered across multiple licensure areas and multiple licensure programs.
Now moving back out to the curriculum level, we need to take a look across the broad spectrum of the courses that are required in the curriculum and the field experiences to determine where these particular competencies that we've selected have been met. One of the things that we started as a prototype in Florida was a hyperlinked curriculum map, which took our state ESOL standards, and we have 25 of them. So the 25 ESOL standards horizontally, and then the courses in each of the degree programs on the other axis. And then when there were assignments in courses or content in courses that either addressed or assessed those standards, they would be named in their respective cells in this huge hyperlinked matrix. And then we were able to actually click on the name of the assignment and see a description of it. That helped us with untold amounts of confusion that students and faculty had regarding what assignments are in which courses and what needs to be done. And again, talking about having multiple instructors for the same course, having that kind of consistency helped. And we're working on expanding that and making that available to other places as well. But technology has been a great help in this process, and I know you all are also working with that, albeit with different programs that you're focusing on and such. Can you give a little background on that?
Most definitely. The advantage we have is that we don't have 25. We're working off of a set of TESOL standards that have been adopted in Ohio as being necessary for a TESOL endorsement. Now, we'll come back to this later, but we're looking at the undergraduate level, a curriculum modification and adaptation of the curriculum to meet the ELL needs. That's not going to lead to an endorsement, but provide some other credential or certificate that would recognize that these undergraduates are much better prepared for the ELLs that they're going to find in their classrooms than previously. A recognition of that extra effort. There are 7 standards in the Ohio TESOL standards. And again, we're following that model of developing a matrix so we can identify where in the curriculum are these standards being met, at what level are these standards being met, so that we can identify where are the gaps. Where do we need to bring a 2+ where we have a 1+? Where do we need to bring something where we have nothing? Once we've developed a little better understanding of where this curriculum is going to go as we move through the different levels of infusion and the different courses that are a part of the infused core in the teacher preparation curriculum, we'll be then better able to look at where are those gaps. And that will then lead us to, as you've done in Florida as well, standalone courses that are going to help to fill in those gaps.
Yes.
Those standalone courses are going to have to bring additional content and expertise to develop the competencies that are not covered fully or covered at the appropriate level because of the course structure or the curriculum structure in a particular licensure program, so that the certificate has a robustness that does indeed say to that holder or someone who's looking at a holder, this person can and is able to work with ELLs effectively in a mainstream classroom. The infusion process is paralleled by the development of standalone courses, recognizing where the courses that we've identified where we want to focus the infusion is not going to cover all of the standards. We're trying to do the mentoring, implementation, revision, there's always going to be that, process on a rolling forward basis while we move through the curriculum with the development of standalone courses that are going to pick up and build upon the infusion process, but also address where those gaps might be in terms of standards. That process is one of, as we've discovered, change and adaptation. Initially we thought 1 course, then we realized no, it's going to have to be 2 courses. Now we're looking at the probability of 3 courses, 2 that are going to focus on the standards and picking up where infusion doesn't complete a competency development. The 3rd course will be a capstone. It'll be a seminar that will allow those candidates to bring together in true capstone fashion issues, concerns that have been addressed in part or fully that need to then be seamlessly brought together as the candidates prepare to go into their internship or after their internship as they prepare to go into the classroom as a practicing teacher. Those standalone courses bring closure to many of the pieces of this preparation puzzle, because they're going to allow for this stitching together of courses that are seen as separate parts of the program. With that, then, we believe the curriculum map is nearly complete, because there's still a piece missing, and that piece is the work with the ELLs. You cannot be prepared to deal with the issues that the ELL brings unless you've dealt with the issues that the ELL brings in the classroom firsthand. So we are also incorporating into our curriculum process an opportunity for students during their field experiences, either at the methods level or during their internship or student teaching, the opportunity, nay, I should say, the expectation that they will have the opportunity to work with ELLs to test, to learn firsthand how those adaptations, how those language acquisition issues bear out in instruction.
Well, as we all know, sometimes the best laid plans go awry, and curricula need tweaking as we get into the process. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about something very positive that just happened at an institution in Florida, where they had infused long ago in the Ed Foundations courses. And the faculty in that program decided that there were some components that were out of date, that needed refreshing, needed updating, and they applied for a small internal grant to gather all of their faculty and to bring in our TESOL experts to relook at their assignments, and even at this point to explore whether the actual competencies and standards that had originally been assigned to their courses still held true. So this was an exciting prospect because it was initiated by the content area faculty who were no longer satisfied with what they had infused into the course, and were willing to put the time and effort into improving the courses. And they came up with some outstanding modifications and actually developed modules that are online that can be used in all sections of the courses, so that there's a great conformity depending on whatever instructor a teacher candidate would have. There would not be variation in the standards that are addressed and in the ways that they would demonstrate those. It involved their not only looking at the course level, but they had to zoom out again and look at those curriculum maps and see how it would impact the curriculum of 4 different degree programs leading to initial certification. Because it's almost, like a house of cards or something. You take one piece out and everything can fall apart. But this had been a concern I had all along, is how are we going to be sure that 10 years from now we're going to have the same quality with the change in faculty and such. And we've seen, at least in this instance, a really good example of faculty taking ownership and collaborating with this. So knowing that you all are at an earlier stage in this, do you have any examples of this kind of tweaking that takes place as you work through the process?
We've just begun the implementation and have already realized that change is going to come. Yeah. It's there. The faculty are becoming more aware of what other faculty are doing. Those faculty that are infusing at this level are recognizing that faculty in a different part of the program in terms of the curriculum are doing something that's akin to, so they're modifying this to make sure that it fits with that. Yes. Yes, that is happening. The syllabi are constantly being compared. The conversations between faculty, one-to-one or one with the mentor or through the mentor sometimes, are changing the character of the activity, the character of the approach to the activity, because we're addressing their ongoing education, if you want to think of it that way, professional development, about those needs that the ELLs bring to the classroom and bring to academic success. I've also often characterized my thinking about the process as being linear. It is not linear. You can't be linear. You can't move forward. You have to continually loop back. You have to continually revisit what you're doing in a way that allows you to move forward in steps that are increasing each time you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we get the full implementation of the infusion model throughout the curriculum, we believe that we will have changed that which we have done before.
Mm-hmm.
That which was initially done will be different, and that process has started already. The 1+ notion in the infusion framework. There are faculty who are coming to us saying, what's this all about? What do I need to do to become a part of it? And we're thinking, you've already made that first step. You've already approached us to ask for our expertise or help with bringing those issues into the curriculum. These are usually people who are outside of licensure, inside of educational psychology, family studies and social work, whatever it might be. Math educators from the mathematics and statistics department have asked about making sure that their math instruction deals appropriately with non-English speaking issues. That's the best example I can think of right there.
That's very exciting.
It always is exciting when they come to you.
Yes. So the last phase that we look at in this repeating process is research and evaluation. And that's not to say that that happens at the end of the process, but throughout. And the analysis, again, happens formatively as well as summatively. It's important to look at individual students across the curriculum to determine where their weaknesses are, ways that they can be remediated so that we can be certain that the credential represents a high level of skill and competence. But also as degree programs, it's important to collect the data from individual students to determine where there might be weaknesses. If we see students having difficulty demonstrating certain standards, then we might want to look back at the curriculum, look at specific courses, look at field experiences to see ways that we could enhance them to address those standards. In addition, the research that we're engaged in right now is beginning to look at their candidates' effectiveness with ELLs once they're in the classroom and projecting out to see whether they have better results than those that haven't had the benefit of either an infused curriculum or a more traditional means of gaining information about English language learners. So what ways are you working through the research and the evaluation components of the model?
Well, as you might suspect, as recipients of a grant, we're going to be held accountable.
Yeah.
There's a yearly expectation of monitoring of progress towards goals that we set out as a part of our receiving the funding. As we work towards the implementation and actual engagement of students in this process of modifying the curriculum, we're going to be looking primarily some of the same things. Aptitude. How do they demonstrate their competencies in working with ELLs? As well as an attitude. Part of what we hope to change is an attitude that it's not a separate part of what you do, but it's an integrated part of what you do as you think of yourself as a teacher, as an instructor, as an educator. So we're looking at those characteristics of the candidates, but we're also looking at the process and looking back at our faculty, and through conversations, through survey, as well as through some rather formal and informal ways of looking at what the faculty have done through the process of their mentoring and the changing of their syllabi and the changing of the curriculum as a whole. What have they thought about in terms of the changes that are going on as well? We're going to have as a culminating activity or as an end-game activity, when our candidates who have gone through this infused process and elect to take the additional courses or choose to do the additional field components that are going along with the credential, the certificate that we will have in place as a result of this whole process. A chance for them to work with ELLs and document whether or not they were effective in academic achievement of that ELL. It's called Project Learning Curve, and it is an in-place activity that's a part of the student teaching internship. Those that are a part of the certificate program will be expected to do that with ELLs. And we will be able to then look at their documented effectiveness of instruction with ELLs present in the classroom along with native English speakers. Hopefully, if all goes well and we've done our job, those candidates will be able to demonstrate academic success for all students.
We've had a very nice discussion about infusion and the similarities and the differences between Florida and Ohio, and we've seen that we've shared some common difficulties, some obstacles to work through, and I wonder if you might share your insights with someone who might be watching who is thinking, I would like to get started with this at my institution, and I want to know exactly what I should be thinking about and be aware of so that I can avoid problems. What kinds of advice would you give?
Well, there's a lot of different things that come to mind in terms of advice. Some of it I'm sure will never be taken to heart. But one of the things that we've discovered, and I say we because it's not just myself, there's a team of faculty who are working together to make sure that this curriculum, infusion, and additional courses comes together and does indeed make a difference in candidates. And that's where I think we've had an excellent success. We've had a buy-in from faculty. All were invited to become participants in the project at some level. Some were encouraged more than others. All were invited to participate, and I think that was a key to getting a group of faculty talking to each other about what they could do, what they were able to do, what they needed to learn more about how to do. And that's where I think we've been able to have success early on, and will have continued success as we move forward. I would offer that as a caveat. Invite. Openness. Openness of purpose and openness of participation gives you a strong starting point for any curriculum change. But when you're working with an area that may not be in the comfort level of many of the faculty, working with ELLs, you've got to be absolutely certain that openness is there. A second caveat or warning would be, begin with an end in mind. What is it that you want to have happen for your faculty and for your candidates? We had the advantage of looking at the programs and the processes and the end result of the infusion endeavors in Florida. We could build on that. We could use that as a place to begin to plan backwards. What is it that we want to do? How is it that the curricula and the processes of bringing candidates through a licensure program in Ohio match or don't match? What is it that we can do and can't do? What is it that we can adapt? And what is it that we just want to leave behind? We were able to have that advantage. And hopefully the model that we're developing at Miami will be adaptable to other institutions in Ohio. Will fit well with the processes that they're going through. But do not assume that we've got the answers. Assume only that we've got the beginning. And you're going to have more success in your own institution. Adapt, do not adopt.
Good suggestion. There's a piece of advice that I'd like to offer anyone who is considering this, and it may sound almost silly, but what I would encourage anyone to consider is whether or not they actually are going to do what they are planning to do, whether it's feasible, whether the faculty are behind it, whether it's something that was put on paper to finish a report and turn that in on time, or if it really represents what the faculty member is going to do in the course. So I can think of many times in long, protracted processes where I worked with faculty members and we went back and forth about content in their courses, and it wasn't always easy, and sometimes there was resistance. But every bit of that discussion and that resistance was valuable, because at the end of that process, we both knew that what we came up with was something that the faculty member was actually going to do. And so it emboldened me and encouraged me that a faculty member would indicate that an idea that I had maybe wouldn't be the best notion for their course, and that we could discuss that and work that out and come up with something that made sense for where they were at and what content we needed to address. That was extremely worthwhile. So the dialogue, the discussion, not worrying about bringing up sometimes difficult issues, and just remembering that whatever is agreed to has to be done. And if anyone is agreeing to do something, they should at least have the intention that it's doable.
Absolutely. That synergy between a mentor and an expert in ELLs and the content expert has to generate something that is agreeable to both, because ultimately it's the ELL in the classroom who's going to benefit when it goes right.
Yes.
And that's critical.
So Bruce, we've established that it's a lot of work to ensure that teacher candidates graduate with an understanding of how to teach and work with English language learners. And Infusion is a partnership and a process that gets us to that place. Given all of the work and the expense and difficulty of going through that process, can you give us a few parting words in terms of the benefits and hopefully why it's worthwhile?
Clearly, if you are in teacher preparation, there's no question that this is the right thing to do. The needs of ELLs in the classrooms, whether they're in Ohio, whether they're in Florida, or they're anywhere else, are going to be a part of any teacher's concern. Meeting those needs as an undergraduate, addressing those needs of the ELLs for the undergraduate candidates is indeed something we should be doing. It is the right thing to do. Infusion, in the process of bringing this into the curriculum, across the curriculum, gives us a way to make sure that all candidates leave the teacher preparation program that they're in with skills and competencies that weren't present in that curriculum before. Having additional coursework, additional field experiences, just extends those competencies and gives those candidates, and recognizes hopefully for those candidates that they're better prepared, that their competencies are then going to be seen as resources by the school personnel that they're working with, so that they can utilize those new teachers in their systems to even better meet the needs of the ELLs that they're going to find in the classrooms. It's the right thing to do. I've said that before. I continue to believe that this is the right time to do what we're doing, to change the curriculum so that teacher preparation is infused, embedded, and integrated with meeting the needs of ELL students.